Welcome to episode 215 of the Campus Comics Cast, as we open the Darkhold in search of vampires and other ghastly ghouls. My name is Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison.
And we are going to be talking about the first 6 issues of the 1972 series Tomb of Dracula. But before we dive into that, I thought we'd take a couple of minutes and just give a real quick our thoughts on the Superman movie, since we both actually saw it within the first week of release, which is like the first time that's happened in quite a while for one of the superhero movies. So, Mike, I'm going to give you the floor and let you go first, since you are the DC guy.
Well, there was a lot riding on this movie, and I know we're keeping this brief because we'll probably talk maybe a little bit more in depth about this and Fantastic Four in a future episode, but with so much riding on it, there was that natural anxiety as to whether expectations would be met. I can say in large part expectations were met, and I will recommend it to people to see. It's a solid turn, whether that's for good or for bad, from Snyder's take. And again, I'm not saying that with any kind of disparagement, because I think Snyder's take would have turned eventually to the happier, hopeful Superman. It just didn't have enough time before the Warner Brothers leadership got antsy and decided to jam a different version down our throats with Justice League. So, yeah, I think I'm going to say yes, go see this.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to second that. Absolutely, go see this movie. I did also really enjoy it. My Man of Steel, though, is still my go-to Superman movie. That's if I had to pick between Man of Steel and this one, I would 100% pick Man of Steel. But I think they're very, very close to each other. Just be prepared for some cornball, I think, is one way to describe it in this Superman film. So if you don't want any cornball, you're going to be disappointed. I don't want to go into any additional details other than that. But I did enjoy it. I think I'm probably going to go see it a second time in the theater. My son wants to go see it. So I think that's a good sign. I'm not dreading that experience or the thought of going to see it again. And because of this movie, I sold a couple of books on eBay. So I can't tell you what books, because that might be a spoiler for some people.
You almost sold said books back to me,
because
I think I sold them to you to begin with.
Maybe it's quite possible. So, but I thought I gave it a grade. If we're going to grade it, I'd give it a very fine minus, which I have like Man of Steel at very fine plus probably. So like I said, they're really, really close to each other. So it's still good, and you definitely need to go watch it.
I have to sort of separate the DC apologist Mike from somewhat of an objective person here, and I'm going to try to give what an objective Mike would give, and I'm going to give it a fine / very fine 7.0, so just a half a grade below yours, but I think that's pretty fair, and when everything's relative compared to other outings, like you said, you're not like you're not dreading going back and seeing something for a second time, or it's shut up, Mike. You're going to spoil whatever we talk about later.
Yeah. So as was mentioned, I think what we're going to do is spend a little bit more time on Superman and on Fantastic Four after Fantastic Four releases. So maybe our August episode after previews, we might spend a little bit more time talking about those two movies together, not compare and contrast, but just spend a little time talking about Superman, spend a little time talking about Fantastic Four.
It's been a while since we've talked about a movie, and
and that's my fault. I've wanted to turn the focus more towards comics, so I don't want to spend an entire episode talking about those two. But give it each one of them 5-10 minutes and go on from there. So
right.
So we do have some listener comments. thought that we should throw out there. First one is from Eric. This is about our pre-orders episode where Eric mentions that he read Star Trek Lower Decks. Let me rephrase it. He read Star Trek Lower Decks dash Warp Your Own Way. He read that recently, and he notes they only use one colon and one hyphen. So, Mike, he wants you to know that somebody out there is listening to you and limiting the number of colons that are in the title. And then Eric also commented that he appreciated the discussion about RSS and XML, even though that kind of gets a little behind the scenes. He mentioned he's converting his WordPress.com account to something that he owns and maintains himself. So I guess, Eric, if you ever want to talk RSS XML, let me know. I'm far from being an expert on it, but I can at least tell you what my experience is and what I do. So sometimes it's not any fun to hear how the sausage gets made, but there you have it. And then Michael Cathro wanted to throw out there, from my mentioning volleyball, he wanted to specifically mention a volleyball manga called Haikyuu, which I was aware of this. It's got like 40-something volumes. There's also like a Haikyuu Receive that's more, I think, about... So the Haikyuu is about indoor volleyball, and the Haikyuu Receive is about beach volleyball. I'm more of a beach volleyball guy, but at this point, there's not so much out there that I can't try to collect both. Because I don't know if I'm ready to sit down and purchase, nearly 60 manga. I haven't decided if manga is actually going to be part of my collection or not. I do have a couple of, I have one of each to try out at some point. But it's, I do appreciate the heads up on that on the Haikyuu. It's nice to know at least somebody's listening, right, Mike?
Yes.
So, all right. So, are you ready to start talking about Tomb of Dracula?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so why are we talking about Tomb of Dracula is the first thing I want to throw out there. So at Superman Celebration this year, I got to sit down and have a meal with Bob McLeod and Gavin Smith, and I asked both of them, well, if you were going to, what's something that you really, really enjoyed reading? And for Bob McLeod, he suggested Tomb of Dracula. So thus, we are going to talk a little bit about Tomb of Dracula. So we decided to cover the first 6 issues. Now, I do want to throw out some timeline information. Of course, I think the concept of vampires has been around for a long time, but I think probably the big event for vampires, of course, is the Bram Stoker Dracula book, right? Which is from 1897.
Correct.
So that's kind of where we kind of got a more solid, I guess, mythology around, or set mythology over vampires. Then in 1931, we get the Universal Monsters Bela Lugosi Dracula film. Okay, and then I'm going to jump ahead to 1958. Mike, you got anything you want to add between 1931 and 1958?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
No.
So 1958, we get, and I didn't do any deep dive into this, but there's a Christopher Lee movie, which is referred to as a Hammer film. I actually don't know exactly what that means. But then in 1970, we get another Christopher Lee film. It's not a Hammer film. Okay, so I assume that's the director. It has something to do with whatever. So I don't know exactly what that means, but Christopher Lee took on the role a couple of times.
And that's the Dracula I grew up, from watching and having that visual for that character was Christopher Lee.
Yeah. Now, backing up from that to 1966, and this is the thing, this has always been to me like the weird thing. So in 1966, there's the TV show Dark Shadows, which is basically a soap opera about the supernatural. And that's one of those things, and it ran until 1971. So it ran almost 5 years, and that is not something that you would think about being on television at that time for such a long period of time. I thought that was kind of odd.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it also makes me think about, I don't know how far, it's hard to remember what those movies were like or what that show was like as far as explicitness, but when you think about the comics code and how restrictive it was on the depiction of vampires. It wasn't until around the time that Tomb of Dracula came out that the
Mm-hmm.
Comics Code relaxed, the Comics Code Authority relaxed it and allowed
Yeah.
vampires because they didn't even allow them for a long time
Exactly.
unless, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
in 1971, I know this may be where you were going. So in 1971, we had the introduction of Morbius in Amazing Spider-Man number 101. And the thing that's why in the name of Morbius, he's not Morbius the vampire, he's Morbius the living vampire because they were not supposed to have portrayals of undead, which included vampires in the comic books because of the Comics Code Authority. Now that's October 1971.
yeah.
Well, April 1972, at least cover date, is when Tomb of Dracula 1 is released, and lo and behold, we not only have a vampire, he's not a living vampire, he is your classic, typical undead vampire. So, really, here in the early 1970s is where you see the comics code starting to wane just a little bit. And a lot of that came out of like those drug issues in Amazing Spider-Man, where they actually published those without the comics code. So the comics code at this point is starting to lose its teeth quite a bit. So now, Mike, you mentioned that you had some other dates and stuff that you wanted to mention. So what do you want to add to that as far as a timeline?
Well, I don't necessarily have dates to go with it, but I did want to mention Dracula's other versions of Dracula in comics. And so first of all, you've got, and I don't know, maybe, or were you going to talk about the other Dracula books at Marvel?
I was not. No.
Okay,
The only thing I would throw out there in addition is that even though this is when these characters started showing up in comic books, you do have the Marvel magazines where they
yeah,
did not have the Comics Code Authority. So a lot
hmm
of supernatural creatures and characters were in the magazine size books. Your things I don't know that like your Marvel previews and those types of books, not just in your regular comic book sized comics.
right, right. Well, I know that, of course, you have the giant-sized Dracula, which ran sort of contemporaneously with Tomb of Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a five-issue anthology deal that probably had reprints and maybe some extra stories. But I also have a copy of Dracula Lives, which is that said magazine size, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
UK version. I
Yep.
picked this up over there when I was over for work, and
And that's the cover to issue 6.
it is. That's why I was like, oh, that's really cool. And interestingly enough, it's pretty thin. It
Mm-hmm.
only has the second half of issue six's story.
Oh.
So yeah, it's the Moreland monster is yeah. Anyway, it's basically half that story and some other story. It's another short story.
Huh.
So I'm sure that other story maybe has more graphic stuff in it because of it being a magazine size or whatever.
Magazine
So
size. Okay.
yeah, but you were talking about how, when vampires could be, with all the rules around vampires,
Mm-hmm.
and how Morbius had to have a little caveat. He had to be like a quasi vampire.
Mm-hmm.
But before before even Morbius, Dell Comics had a Dracula version that
Okay.
actually got into the Book of Regrettable Heroes or Forgettable Heroes or something. I used to have an issue of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically Dracula in a
Get a
superhero garb. He's in
yeah. It's like
tights. He's
yeah, purplish and orange. It's terrible, terrible
oh,
colors.
it's awful. He's got
Yeah.
weird helmet and
Mm-hmm.
he basically was a medical researcher in Transylvania and accidentally gained vampire-like powers while developing a serum from bat blood. So maybe Kurt Langstrom and him can compare notes.
There you go.
So yeah, I thought that was the one I was like, I had that a while back. I'm like, I can't even stand. Look at this cover. It was from like
No.
'66 to '67 that came out, and then the other versions throughout time, which I don't have dates. There was one called Helsing, as in Van
Okay.
Helsing from Dark
Yeah.
Horse Comics, where there was a guy named Alucard, a gun-toting Dracula, and then we had Midnight Children from Viz Media, telling the Dracula story from more of a kid's point of view,
Right.
or
Well,
for
Viz would
kids.
probably be manga-ish as well.
Maybe, yeah.
And I think the Hellsing is kind of manga-ish anime style as well.
Oh,
So,
okay.
because and I may not be remembering this correctly, but those were probably imported stories from Japan. So they would not have necessarily had, at least their original, they wouldn't have to deal with the comics code in Japan. That's just a U.S. thing.
Right. Okay. And of course, as in the recent years, we've seen all these different reinventions of the Universal monsters.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Dracula series, I believe it was like most 4 issues long, and it adapts the Todd Browning film version of Dracula.
Okay.
And then there's one more which I'd never heard of, these Savage Shores from Vault Comics,
Okay.
and then lastly there was the one Dracula I could find in DC was Batman and Dracula called Red Rain, and it was an
Okay.
Elseworld story. So Batman becomes Dracula, and yeah, Superman fights Count Romanoff and whatever. But
So Dracula was never part of like the Creature Commandos or anything. Kind of Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, were part of the
you know
Creature
what?
Commandos.
There
Okay.
was a Dracula in Creature Commandos, I think.
Okay. All right. So that's the first place I didn't look that up, but I was
Well,
surprised when you said that that was the only one you could find because
well,
I
you
I
got to
would have
remember
thought.
my research extends to the first page of a Google
Oh, okay.
quick. Yeah.
First results of a
So
Google search.
I'm not I'm not going too far into it, but you're right. I can't believe that because Creature Commandos for sure had one. Not
Okay.
the latest James Gunn Creature Commandos,
Right.
but the one from GI, or with GI Robot, or not, yeah, GI Robot,
Yep.
and whatever. Yeah,
Yep.
had a whole slew of them, including him.
Now, of course, Marvel is still, I don't know, milking may not be the right word. The vampire stuff. They just had the Blood Hut crossover last year. Of course, that was vampire
Hmm.
based. And but even like back in the Chris Claremont X-Men days, there was an annual where I think maybe, and gosh, it's been so long, but the cover implies that Storm was bitten by Dracula and becomes a vampire herself. So
That's right. I did see that somewhere.
I think
Yeah.
it's like annual 6, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so this character has been still exists in the Marvel universe. They're still using this character for stories or to influence stories, even within the last year or so. All right.
My
Any other
favorite,
comments? Go ahead.
it's not Dracula, but my favorite vampire stories are the Anne Rice novels. The Interview with the Vampire,
Mm-hmm.
which had a not so great movie made out of it, and Vampire Lestat, The Queen of the Damned.
Yeah.
That is really that's my favorite kind of vampire story, which some of that's in line with the mythology of the character in these comics.
Have you read Bram Stoker's Dracula before?
I have.
Okay.
Yep.
The one thing that stood out to me about that book was that it was written basically as a journal, which I had not read anything that was written as a journal before.
Right.
So because it has all the dates and stuff, that's
Yeah.
if I remember anything about it, that's like the one thing I remember. So
It was, and I remember Mina. Wilhelmina was sort of the love interest or the object of his hunting and affections, and maybe it was her journal too, but she went by Mina.
okay,
That
that I don't
sounds,
remember. I've only read it once, and it's been a very very long time.
and I can't find Dracula in Creature Commandos.
Well, maybe it doesn't exist. That's why I said I was surprised. So
Yeah, maybe it was in like a later. Anyway,
okay, so we're going to cover the first 6 issues of Tomb of Dracula, which would be roughly equivalent to what the first volume of the series. The series was 72 issues, 70 something issues, right?
I thought it was 70.
Maybe it is 70.
I think it was originally slated as 72, but Jim Shooter made Wolfman shut the shut the
Wrap it
door,
up a little bit.
wrap it
Yeah,
up
wrap it
quickly,
up.
and I think the last issue was like a double sized. And I
Ah,
think I
okay.
read that Marv Wolfman actually lost. There was like 14 pages that never got published.
Ah, okay. So I didn't read that. That's not kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about. And it's funny though. You mentioned Marv Wolfman, who that's the book, one of the books that he's known as the writer on. Well, he
Hmm.
doesn't start till issue 7. So what we have is Jerry Conway writing the first 2 issues, Archie Goodwin writing issues 3 and 4, and then Gardner Fox, whom most people I think associate with DC Comics more than Marvel Comics,
Yeah.
is writing issues 5 and 6. Pencils through all 6 issues are by Gene Colan, and then it looks like Vince Colletta inks issue 2, and then Tom Palmer inks issues 3 to 6, and then the lettering is by John Costa, who, as we progress through, becomes John Costanza. So I assume he was using a pseudonym for a few issues and then switched to his full name, or switched to another pseudonym. I'm going to assume it's his full name towards the end of the series. So
Yeah. I some of what you're saying there, I took a even though I didn't research much on the internet, I do have a copy of Gene Colan's Secrets in the Shadows: The Art and Life of Gene Colan. I have that reference book, and it has some good quotes and information lining up exactly with what you said about it was including I think it said that Jerry Conway was the sole writer as far as credits go, but the plot was actually written by Roy Thomas and Stan Lee.
yeah.
And then of course when Goodwin came on, uh, he's the one he just brought in Van Helsing and her friend Taj, and yeah, it's well, here's the other note I had said is Gene Colan said that he designed Dracula not off of other Dracula actors like Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee, but
Jack
Palance. Yeah.
Which his series, I think, was a TV series, and I didn't write it down, but I think, well, but see, here's the thing. That TV series wasn't until after, I don't think that TV series happened until after this was published.
Well, maybe that's why he got hired as Dracula.
Maybe. I think I remember that he said Jack Palance, but I lost that page. But the Jack Palance didn't happen until 1974.
Oh yeah, that is in 74. So where did I wonder?
Well, maybe he just. I mean, Jack Palance was around, so
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't because Jack Palance was Dracula. He just thought that Jack Palance had the look. So maybe he was a little prophetic there with his.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and of course, sometimes people misremember things. So
True.
But I'm just going to say
you could see the similarity.
It has to be that he just chose, and then he became the character. So
right, that's crazy.
Different artists for the cover, so we'll talk about that as we go through each issue. I was surprised at some of the names that did these first 6 covers. The only one that I really could have told you without having looked was the cover of the first issue, which we'll get to that later on. But the others, I was like, oh, I know that name. Oh, I know that name.
Right.
All right, so let's go through the main characters real fast, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
All right. So, of course, we have Dracula. He's I guess I'm going to refer to him as our anti-hero. Main character, book is titled off of his name. And this is, by the way, the Dracula from the Bram Stoker books. I mean, it basically says that Bram Stoker's, it doesn't come flat out say it, but it implies that Bram Stoker's book wasn't fiction. It was true and then based on this Dracula's life. Yeah.
Vlad the Impaler from the 1400s, I believe.
There you go. All right. Then we have Frank Drake, and so he's our main protagonist, and he is actually a descendant of Dracula. Thus, the name Drake is a shortened name for Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Jeannie. Now, flipping back through, I never saw a last name for Jeannie. Do you remember a last name for Jeannie?
No.
Okay,
No.
All right. So Jeannie's Frank's love interest. And by the way, she also dated, next character, Clifton Graves, who is a friend and advisor to Frank Drake, who also at some point in the story is going to fall under the influence of Dracula.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we get a mute companion named Gort. Then we get to was it the third issue, which I guess is the Archie Goodwin stuff. This is where we get introduced to Rachel Van Helsing. So she is from the line the Van Helsing's vampire killers, who has her own mute assistant named Taj. All
What
right.
is it about mute assistants?
Well, we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
Then I think there's two more characters I'm going to mention. You have a slew of villagers who are basically the red shirts of the stories. One of them's dying every single every single issue. Most of the time it's a woman, but occasionally it is a man. But you also have Ilsa Strangeway. So she is this elderly rich woman who has this incredible fascination, fixation about Dracula, and she's willing to do anything to return her beauty. She's older now. And then the last character that I want to mention is a character named Lenore, who is yet another vampire who Dracula kind of has tucked away, for a lack of a better way of describing it. So, is there any other characters that you think are significant enough to spend some time or just introduce?
No, I made the same kind of list, but I actually
Okay.
forgot Clifton Graves of all things,
Oh, okay.
because he is pretty central to this first little arc of stories. So no, I didn't have any other ones. Yeah, I have comments about some things, but no real characters to add.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can, make your way through it, do you want to take the first issue?
Absolutely. Okay, issue 1, Dracula. Cover by Neil Adams. Oops, I didn't need to put that in there.
Well, no, I put that in
Oh,
there.
you
I
did.
just I have who did the covers for each of the
Okay.
individual issues.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So, retake. Click. Okay, Frank, along with companions Jeannie and Clifton, are attempting to find the castle that Frank had inherited. Frank intends to sell the castle to reverse his financial fortunes. En route, their rented Jeep crashes into a ditch due to the poor weather outside, so the trio arrive in a nearby village to seek a ride to the castle. The trio are warned of the dangers of the castle, but one man is willing to take them by carriage to the outskirts of the castle, but no further. We then get a flashback of how Frank lost his father's fortune but inherited Castle Dracula. Frank and Clifton come up with a plan to turn the castle into a tourist attraction. As Frank learns about the castle and Dracula, he becomes obsessed with the story and the place. Back at the castle, the trio enter and are greeted by a swarm of bats. As the swarm subsides, the trio splits up and Clifton falls through the floor into the basement to discover, yes, you guessed it, the Tomb of Dracula. He opens the coffin to discover a skeleton with a stake through its ribcage. He removes the stake, big mistake, and
Yes.
Dracula returns to life and captures Clifton. Frank and Jeannie discover the hole in the floor Clifton fell through, which through comes Dracula in the form of a bat. Dracula hypnotizes Jeannie, so Frank strikes her and uses a silver compact to fend off the vampire. Drake takes Jeannie to a bedroom while Dracula finds his first victim in the nearby village. The villagers discover Dracula's victim and form a mob to move on the castle. Dracula returns to the castle and discovers Jeannie lying in bed, but Frank has placed a cross around her neck for protection. Frank again fends off Dracula with the silver compact, but this time hurls it at Dracula, striking him. Unfortunately for Frank, this is only a minor inconvenience for Vlad as he beats Frank into unconsciousness. Jeannie awakes and Dracula hypnotizes her and forces her to remove the cross around her neck. The villagers arrive at the castle and set it aflame. Frank awakens, recovers the compact, and uses it to fend off Dracula, who flees. Frank carries Jeannie out of the castle only to discover that Jeannie is now a vampire who walks into the night.
Dun, dun,
Dracula's...
dun.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so yeah, the rest is just notes here, so...
Yeah. So okay. So I guess Clifton. That's the thing. Clifton pulls the stake out. So if he doesn't pull the stake out, the story ends right there.
Right.
Comic over. Done.
It's funny, until I'm reading the synopsis, it didn't even dawn on me. I'm like, yeah, big mistake.
Yeah. It's like the people. If this is a movie, people in the audience yelling, "Don't pull the stake!" And what does he do? He pulls the stake. So.
Right. Yeah.
I guess the other thing, my other comment is like the scene where Frank hits Jeannie. Now she's being hypnotized, right? So
Yeah.
I guess the argument is legit, but it's like, turn her around. You don't have to knock her out. So I have this whole Hank Pym flashback of Hank and whenever Hank hits Janet, which
Right.
this may have happened. I'm trying to think. Well, that actually would have been before Hank hitting Janet, long time before.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that also dawns on me after reading that is that a silver compact, that's got to be pretty rare. Not many women, I think, would carry around a compact made of silver.
well, I did it mention that it was that Frank gave it to Jeannie at some point. Is that why she had it? Because it was given
That's
to her?
could very well be, but even
Yeah.
then, I would think people would, you know,
Yeah.
lose or forget it or whatever.
And then, he does so well. He fends off Dracula with just this piece of silver. Okay, great. But then later he thought, oh, I'll throw it at him. Maybe that'll do more.
Yeah.
So he gives up his one weapon that he has against the vampire. Oh.
I'll also say that Jeannie becomes a vampire immediately after
Mhm.
being bitten, and that is contrary to both vampire lore and later instances in this series. So I think I have this really sneaky suspicion now that I know that Roy Thomas and Stan Lee had a hand in the plot. Maybe they just kind of threw this at Jerry and said, you have 2 days to get this worked out,
Yeah.
and it didn't get. There were some mistakes I think in here because of that. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, those who are fed upon by a vampire would rise up from the grave 3 days later as a vampire, unless they were killed before they had
Right.
been completely, recovered
I
or
couldn't remember the time
rejuvenated.
frame. I didn't realize it was 3 days. So
Now, in like Lewis or Lestat in the Anne Rice novels, they the whole trick was to become a vampire. Most vampire victims would just die, but the trick for them to be turned into a vampire is they had to be fed. They'd have to stop taking their blood, sucking their blood at a crucial moment just before they are completely dead, and then the vampire cuts its own wrist or whatever and feeds the the newly made vampire. It's quite a process,
yeah.
and uh, they have to that when they recover a day or two later, I guess that's when they're hungry, thirsty, whatever.
Yep. All right. Well, you got anything else for issue 2?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Let's just plug on to issue 1. Plug on
Yeah,
to issue 2.
yeah.
So now issue 2 has a cover by John Severin. Now, if you look at the cover, it just has JS in the lower left-hand corner. So it's like, okay, I wasn't for sure who did that cover, so I had to go look that up because you have John Severin, you have Joan Severin. Now,
True.
it didn't remind me of Joan Severin's artwork, so if I had
Well,
to have guessed between the two, I would have guessed John, but I looked it up.
well, while you're on the subject of covers,
Hmm.
what do you like the framework style covers that are on all six of these issues? Do you not
Oh,
like them? I know they were sort of a bit of a trend back in the
trend, yeah.
70s. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like what the DC did the checker box or the checkerboard up at the top. I mean, it's just something that identified their covers.
Hmm.
I, if I had to choose, I think I would probably prefer a full art on the cover as opposed to just what we get, which I consider partial art on the cover.
Yeah,
But
I would agree.
yeah.
And I mean, this is a good cover. It's
Oh
just
no, it is
really
an awesome
small.
cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but I guess it does, there's more emphasis on words on the cover than
Yeah.
back then than what there is now.
Yeah.
So without that being, it makes it's more about the art on the cover. So I guess they don't need. I mean, they'll even. I was going through my books and there was like an issue of Strange Tales or something that it had it like in one corner. We would have put more words on the cover, but Jack didn't leave us any room. I mean, it's like one of those types of notes,
Yeah.
So like how important the wording was at this time and how unimportant it becomes,
Right.
as we move forward. So,
Yeah, it's just more of the cover copy is takes I mean the Tomb of Dracula logo takes up a good
mhm,
fourth of the cover without it being overlaid. It's just black
yeah,
background behind it. And then the
hmm,
bottom cover copy is another maybe eighth of the cover. Who Stole
maybe,
My
yeah.
Coffin? But still, I always, it's an interesting, I remember the Batman family books had a lot of those boxed, especially because it was an anthology and you had about 5 stories in it. So you had a little box, one with Batgirl, one with Batman, one with Robin, one with Man Bat, whatever. And it was seemed a bit distracting.
I I think they all have their place, and I
Hmm.
like how it's changed. I mean, I'm glad it's not the exact same as it was in the 1930s as it is now. And there are some things that it's nice to, you know, you get all those homage covers where they homage back to this style. I'm not saying
Hmm.
this cover, but this style of cover. Where
Yeah.
I guess the best example of that right now is like Mark Spears, where he has all these variant covers for his Mark Spears monsters, and he's homaged this style on some of those covers. So,
Right.
all right, so issue 2, Frank and Gort, who's that mute that gets introduced, search the ruins of the castle for signs of Dracula and a way to save Jeannie from her vampirism, only to discover Dracula's tomb and coffin. The pair rescue Clifton from his pit and plan to take Dracula's coffin. In the nearby village, Dracula takes another victim. Dracula finds a former and now much older servant who assists him but is then killed by Dracula. Frank and Clifton return to London with Dracula's coffin. In his hotel room, Frank is greeted by Jeannie, and Frank uses a cross to keep her at bay. Dracula has also traveled to London and claims another victim. Back in the hotel room, Jeannie hypnotizes Clifton, who drugs Frank and releases her as Dracula enters the room. Frank awakens, but Jeannie commands Clifton to attack Frank, on whom the traditional symbols, cross, silver, have no effect. Frank punches Clifton, and Dracula pounces on an unprepared Frank. Jeannie prepares to bite Clifton as Dracula hurls Frank across the room. Frank plunges a broken piece of wood into Jeannie's back to save Clifton just as dawn arrives. Dracula is forced to flee as the sunlight turns Jeannie, causing her death, her suffering now at an end. They were very
Yeah.
suddenly back to London. It's just like, can you imagine going through TSA now with a coffin?
Right. Yeah. That is true. Yeah.
And I never really understood what the point of Gort was. So we add this mute. I guess his sole job is to carry the coffin, right? And
Yes.
then we never see Gort again. So I only mention him in the list of critical characters because the fact that we had, as you mentioned before, we had the mute Gort and then we get the mute Taj.
Yes.
So it's almost like, did they not share notes? Did they, or no, we want this to be Rachel's assistant, so we got to get rid of Gort and give him a new name. It was just kind of weird.
I'm telling you. I mean, I know we're going to meet Rachel later, but Rachel and Jeannie as characters seem to like conflate to me into one person. That's why it's almost like it was a surprise. I'm like, wait a second, Jeannie died in the second issue, but I'm thinking of Rachel. So
Yeah, yeah. Now, okay, so here's my question. Okay, so Dracula, he kills this victim in the village. He goes to a former servant of his, who it basically says that, and soon after hours of experimentation and finally operation, there rings grin laughter in von Harbaugh's humble cottage. So it's basically, it never says what he did. I guess he
mm,
doesn't look any different. So it's like, what was the service that he provided Dracula? I because he
it's
doesn't look any different.
no,
I didn't get it. So
I don't
it,
either.
it seemed a little unnecessary. I don't have any other notes on issue 2. It's just kind of straightforward. So
Mine's more of a historical vampire
okay,
mythology. Is that Dracula in this issue says that it's the dirt within his coffin that's important, not the coffin itself.
hmm,
And in Bram Stoker's book, a vampire can only sleep in a coffin filled with dirt from the vampire's homeland.
right,
So this is definitely pulling more from vampire lore in that regard, which I think is good. I think that
yes.
makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and
So
if it is supposed to be the same Dracula, then it needs to match up with what was in the book. And now, not everything does,
right.
but at least some of it does. So,
Yeah.
all right, on to issue 3.
Okay. Issue 3. Now this cover is by Gil Kane. All right. A bereft Frank Drake plans to kill himself. but is stopped by Rachel Van Helsing and Taj. Clifton is kicked out of a bar and is controlled by Dracula, who sends Clifton to recover his coffin. Rachel introduces Frank to the tools of her trade, and Frank agrees to assist Rachel in her quest to destroy Dracula. As Clifton attempts to recover Dracula's coffin with the assistance of a night porter, a false bottom is revealed containing a large amount of gold coins as Dracula arrives to reclaim his property. Frank, Rachel, and Taj hear a scream and rush to the scene to discover Dracula's coffin with the night porter dead inside. Dracula and Clifton escape, and the trio are caught by Scotland Yard. Later that evening, the night porter awakens as a vampire, and Rachel and Taj kill the night porter, proving their story to Scotland Yard. Dracula arrives at a large mansion as a solicitor, which, as a lawyer for some folks, arrives to speak to Ilsa Strangeway about her latest acquisition, a black mirror with ties to Dracula. As the unbelieving solicitor is sent away, Dracula enters Ilsa's room, and Ilsa begins to barter with the Count. I like how this gives you a little bit of a hint as to the next issue, where the previous ones didn't.
Yeah, so you get the setup of it's going to be, a continuing story, moving forward from here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Gort. I just want to know what happened to Gort. That's what I want to know. He's gone. He carried a coffin, and it's like, done with you. Go away.
What happened was Archie Goodwin said, "No, I don't like Gort. I'm going to create Taj.
I'm going to create my own mute." Yeah.
Yeah.
So Clifton is basically, was it Renfield? Is that right? The lackey in the Bram Stoker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that kind. Now, just got to throw out there, we got a Black Mirror. So.
Oh my gosh! I never even thought of that. Oh no. That's funny. Oh man.
Yep. Well, I had to put that out there. So. You got any other comments on issue 3?
Yeah, the art. Coletto, his single offering for the 6 that we reviewed was issue 2. Not that I was distracted or thought it was bad, but seeing Palmer's inks behind Colin instead of Coletta's was a big improvement, I think. And something else I noticed, something you don't see, and I'm going to ask you before I tell you or sort of say it, as far as the narration goes, did you notice anything in the first 3 issues that is unusual in the narration when you think of first, second, and third person?
I guess not, no.
I hardly ever see this, but these first few issues were in the second person, which is like if you look at the first page of this issue, the narration starts out as, "Your name is Frank Drake, and for a day you've numbly walked the London streets." Whereas first person is you're saying it from your perspective. I did this, I did that. Third person is like a third person saying, Scott did this, Mike did that.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen that in I don't know how long, and I guess it works in some situations, but Goodwin did it for this issue, but then next issue he goes to a standard third person.
Was that it? So he continued what Jerry Conway had done, right? Is what you're saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another little bit of vampire lore that's revealed in this issue: a vampire can't enter a person's home unless they are invited in by the owner of that home. This is it's not always followed throughout the Tomb of Dracula series, I think, but sometimes I can see that being a little bit constraining. And to add to your question about how do you sneak a coffin through TSA, I wonder, a coffin full of gold coins.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might set off the...
And especially, just think of how strong Gort had to be to carry that coffin. Not only was it a coffin, but it was a coffin with a false bottom that was still large enough for a vampire to sleep in, had a false bottom that had lots of gold coins. And they didn't jingle? I don't know.
Can't think too hard about it, huh?
No, I guess I can. So, you were talking about the vampires being invited. Did you watch on Netflix? I think the series name was Midnight Mass. It's where there's a guy who's done several. I think he's the American Horror Story guy, and he's done some series for Netflix like Fall of the House of Usher and Midnight
No,
Mass. And
no.
okay, well, it's a vampire story. Spoilers.
Hmm.
Okay, and I realized, I mean, they don't tell you going in that it's a vampire story. And at the end of the first episode, like the main male character, he's standing outside of this house, and then he's just standing there, and then finally somebody says, "Well, don't you want to come in?" So I immediately said, "Oh, he's a vampire." So this whole thing's about vampires. Well, he wasn't a vampire, but the show was about vampires. He just wasn't a vampire. So it was just a, I don't know if it's coincidence or foreshadowing or whatever to made this about vampires, but I figured out it was about vampires from completely unrelated to the vampires. So
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean,
yeah,
well, you were cued in on it.
I noticed it. So yeah, because he didn't go in until he was invited in. So all right, issue 4. This one we have a cover by Neil Adams and John Romita Sr. So all right, so in the home of Ilsa Strangeway is where we start. So Ilsa is well prepared for Dracula to fend off his attacks. What Ilsa wants in exchange for the secret of the Black Mirror is to become a vampire herself in hopes of restoring her beauty. Dracula gives Ilsa her wish. Ilsa's butler hears Ilsa scream and is struck by Dracula when he enters the room. Later in the hospital, Rachel and Frank interview the butler about the events of the evening. Taj tracks Dracula from the Strangeway home as night begins to fall. Dracula and Ilsa awaken, and Ilsa keeps her end of the bargain and tells Dracula how the mirror may be capable of returning him to the 19th century. Ilsa and Dracula go into the night to hunt. Frank, Rachel, and I have Raj down in my notes, but it's Taj, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Taj discover the vampire's resting place and consecrate their coffins. Ilsa claims her first victim as Dracula discovers and attacks Frank, who is saved by Taj with a flashlight with a cross shadow. Ilsa returns and is confronted by Rachel, who tells Rachel the truth about the mirror, how it is a portal to a demonic realm. Since Ilsa did not receive back her beauty, Ilsa asks Rachel to kill her, and Rachel obliges. Dracula returns to the mirror and uses the incantation to enter. Taj arrives and attempts to tackle the vampire before he enters, but instead they are both sucked into the mirror, leaving Frank and Rachel back in the 20th century.
Easily my favorite issue of the 6.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
My one and only comment is that if you know it's getting ready to be night, why don't you just wait till morning to go and find their coffins?
Yeah. I thought that myself. Yeah. Yeah. I think
But I guess it'd be over a lot sooner. The whole story would be over a lot more quickly if they did that. So
true. Yeah, I just liked good ones. I just felt like this was a more enjoyable read. It was, I don't know, it was just really captured my imagination. The whole dark mirror, though, being used as a portal, I dug that. And
I know she didn't say Black Mirror.
You're right. Didn't mean not to, but yeah, it just was and I like the idea that what's her name, Ilsa.
Mm-hmm.
It's her vanity that's really driving her to make this deal with Dracula, and then it turns out she didn't read the fine print.
Yep. We don't learn that till the next issue, though.
Oh gosh, that's right. I'm
Yeah.
getting ahead of myself. Sorry. But yeah, she's I mean, not relatable personally, but you can see the temptation by someone that's like, if I can be young, I don't mind being a vampire. I can do that, no problem. So, yeah, it was a good issue. Okay.
Okay. Up to 5. Are we ready for 5?
I think so.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is a cover by Gil Kane again. I get all the Gil Kane covers, I guess. All right, Dracula and Taj arrive not in the 19th century as expected, but in a demonic realm. Dracula rescues Taj from the demons as he may be needed as a food source for the vampire as he hunts for a way out of the realm. Back in the earthly realm, Frank and Rachel hunt for the incantation to activate the Black Mirror. Dracula discovers another mirror, and it acts as a portal back to Transylvania. Dracula stores Taj in a coffin and goes out into the night to hunt and claim another victim. Dracula then finds the home of Abraham Van Helsing, who slew him in the past and plans to take his revenge on him. However, Van Helsing is not home, so Dracula returns to his castle. On the way to the coffin, Dracula passes a bottle of blood, who he refers to as Lenore, who is somehow imprisoned in the bottle. But Dracula must make his way to his coffin as daylight approaches. The townspeople discover Dracula's victim and form a mob to descend around the castle, but a rejuvenated Dracula easily fends them off. Back in the earthly realm, Frank and Rachel discover the book containing the needed incantation and enter the Black Mirror, which brings them not to the demonic realm, but to the same mirror where Dracula emerged into the past. The pair rescue Taj from the coffin. As at Castle Dracula, Dracula smashes the bottle of blood, releasing Lenore, another vampire, who is sent to attack Frank, Rachel, and Taj. They battle, and Lenore is forced to flee as Frank and Taj use a marble cross to ward off Lenore. Dracula has since returned to Van Helsing's home as he prepares to kill Abraham. The trio are... I need to start that whole sentence again, sorry. They battle, and Lenore is forced to flee as Frank and Taj use a marble cross to ward off Lenore. Dracula has since returned to Van Helsing's home, and as he prepares to kill Abraham, the trio arrives, forcing the Count to flee. Lenore reunites with Dracula, and the pair once again travel through the Black Mirror to escape, with Frank, Rachel, and Taj right on their heels.
Yeah, apologies on my notes. Sometimes I just use trio to refer to Frank, Rachel, and Taj instead of keep writing Frank, Rachel, Taj.
Well, my problem is I didn't read this in advance. I went in cold, and I didn't when you see a comma and you weren't expecting the comma and you say it a different way. But anyway, that you guys got the gist of it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think I do like, okay, so we talked about nitpicking things like, oh, well, why didn't he just, not remove the stake? Or why didn't he, they go during the day? Well, here it's like, okay, Dracula keeps Taj alive, but he has a good reason for keeping Taj alive because he doesn't know if there's any source of food, so this can be just kind of like his blood donor until he figures out a way to get out of where it is. So I did like that little bit.
Yeah, there was a couple things I was like, okay, they had, granted, if you have to use a tombstone cross, a marble cross to ward off a vampire, I guess you got to do it. But man, that would be hard to do. That'd be pretty heavy to try to use that. They definitely use the cross more than anything to, to prepare or protect themselves from a vampire. And
I think Taj did most of the heavy lifting there. Is my
true.
Opinion.
That's true. I forgot Taj. One thing about being mute is that you're have
strong.
to be strong
You have to be
along
strong.
with it. Yeah. So, as you kind of alluded to, what was it now? It slipped my mind. Never mind. Move on. Oh, the blood. Lenore was in the blood. Somehow she's in this blood, and it just that seemed like a shortcut that maybe wasn't thought through. How can they bring Lenore as an assistant vampire to the story? And that was definitely a quick way to do it.
Yeah, they couldn't just have put another coffin in a secret room or
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. So I don't know of any ties to anything else that happens, but oh well, it is what it is.
I will say that, okay, so knowing ahead of time that Gardner Fox, having been around for decades and he was one of the most prolific writers in the history of comics, going back to the All-Star Comics, he created some of the original 40s, Golden Age characters. But his stories that you read at DC were very, very formulaic. They had, especially team stories, team books. I was thinking, okay, this is probably not going to be that great of a story, but I thought he did just fine. I thought this read just fine. I don't know if I not to get ahead of myself on the next issue, but he did write the next issue too. So either way, it was better than I think it was better than the first two issues, written by Conway / Lee and Thomas.
I don't disagree, and especially when you compare this to like, oh, what it was he wrote that JSA story that we read where it was basically like the same
Yeah.
story like six different times,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it was so
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So like when I saw his name, it's like, oh, this is gonna be bad. But no, and I get the feeling that when you look at some of these names, I mean these are not nobodies. Now some of them are early in their careers, but Neil Adams, John
Hmm.
Romita, Gil Kane, Jerry Conway, Marv Wolfman. Now I guess really early in Marv Wolfman's career, but it's a lot of big names on this title. So
Hmm.
there definitely was something in the zeitgeist where people were like, oh, either I want to do a horror book or oh, I want to do a Dracula book. And I think
Sure.
that kind of goes back to the films and the love of Universal monsters, and that
Well, there's a
that
lot
we're able to
of.
get people involved with this project.
I mean, you're not having to create things out of whole cloth. You have all these, the
Mm-hmm.
mythology to draw from, and you can put in some variations, and I would think it would be not only it would be appealing in a lot of ways, but that would be one as well that you've got some boundaries that you have to stay within, but still, yeah, I can see that. And Gardner Fox went to Marvel about this time because I believe it's when DC was really kind of screwing over its older creators and kind of pushing them out the door. They were trying to bring in the new blood, the new Jacks,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they, I don't know what they did or said to Fox, but I think he looked for work over at Marvel because of it.
All right, you ready to move on to the last issue, issue 6?
Yes, just don't let me read it because I'll botch it.
Oh, well, I'll probably botch it too. So, all right. Issue 1 had a cover by Neil Adams. So does issue 6. So, cover by Neil Adams. Dracula and the Nor arrive at a ruined chapel in an English moor. Dracula once again goes on the hunt and slays a servant girl. But as Dracula leaves his victim, a large, man shaped, furry beast grieves over the body. The beast then carries the girl back to the ruined chapel. Dracula claims another victim as Frank, Rachel, and Taj emerge from the Black Mirror, but this time at a different location, the Strangewell home. Scotland Yard finds the trio and informs them another body has been discovered in the moors, where there have also been sightings of a shaggy monster. The trio travel to a home on the moors and learn of the ruined chapel. The trio then travels to the ruined chapel and split up. Why? Rachel is attacked by Lenore. Frank and Taj heard the screams to discover, or head to the screams to discover Lenore hovering over Rachel with Dracula behind them. Frank raises his crossbow to kill Dracula, but Dracula pulls Lenore in front of him to block the stake, killing Lenore. Dracula escapes into the moors, but is followed by the shaggy monster. The trio returns to the home with the body of the servant girl. The trio then learns the story of the shaggy monster. It is a son of the couple who live on the moors, who became this way through some genetic recessive genes. Taj is able to track Dracula back to an abandoned castle. Dracula ambushes the trio and tosses them down a hole, which he then covers up. I believe they refer to it as an oubliette. Soon after, the trio are rescued by the shaggy monster. Frank then confesses to himself that he is in love with Rachel, but can never express his love as he could because someday he might become a vampire. To wrap up issue 6. Okay, so Frank has trouble with women. It's just, like he hit Jeannie, and now instead of thinking about protecting Rachel, he's more focused on killing Dracula. So he could have tried to shoot Lenore, but instead shoots at Dracula. So Dracula pulls Lenore in front of the crossbow bolt, killing Lenore, but Dracula saves himself and inadvertently saves Rachel in the process.
I kind of like the idea of the love interest between Frank and Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
but the
He's
whole
moved on
thing,
pretty quick.
yeah. I mean, they when they thought they were going to die, he was like, yeah, he wanted to profess his love, but when they were rescued, he said he could never love her because what? Because he could become a vampire at any time. Why is that? I
Well, I
mean,
guess because he's an ancestor. I mean, he is an ancestor of Dracula.
but does that cause vampirism, I guess. Okay.
Apparently, in Tomb of Dracula, there's
Oh,
the
okay.
potential. I don't know. I guess we'd have to read the rest of it so
Yeah.
to find that out.
Well,
So
I'd be like, hey, look, Rachel, just stab me with a stake, if I
yeah.
turn into a vampire.
It kind of gets this whole, I remember going back and reading some of like the Captain America books, like from the same time period, and man, it's just like the whole romance thing is it makes its way into these books. So here it's like you got this gothic horror romance thing going on here inside
Hmm.
of Tomb of Dracula.
Yeah, that was a thing. It was so much a thing that I think there was a nostalgic reinvention of remember the Forbidden Castle, or the Castle of Forbidden Love, or the man. There was a
Mm-hmm.
couple, three titles that had that sort of. They were almost so risque for the time that they had to change the titles a bit, tweak them to where they weren't so didn't allude to something really nefarious.
Yeah.
But I just in the last 4 or 5 years, there was a book by featuring Dead Man, and it was a Dead Man and the Forbidden Love, or some kind of
Mm-hmm.
uh, mansion of. It was really good. I'm like, oh, that's really. I'm glad to bring that sort of type of genre back for a bit. But first thing I thought of was this issue here. This story was kind of separate from the other ones. Was Mike No would probably like this story
Oh
with
yeah.
his interest in Bigfoot type monsters and such.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this to me, just anytime you're on the English moors, it just automatically makes me think of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah,
So
right.
Hounds of Baskerville, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yep. True. I didn't know what a Moor was until I read that. I was
there you
probably a teenager when I read it, but I learned something then. So I did do a little research as to what this condition was, rachitis.
I
How
thought
did you?
about it. I said, you know what? It feels too made up,
To a
but it's
degree,
not
it is
apparently.
made up.
Okay, all right.
But let's elucidate ourselves and our listeners. So, rachitis is cited in the story as being a generic disorder that causes a twisted form and a body full of hair. Well,
Genetic disorder.
genetic. Did I say generic?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so a genetic disorder that causes a twisted form and a body full of hair. Well, technically, that's true.
Oh, actually, no. Now that's a different illness. That's the accompanying illness of Navis pilosis, which causes an inordinate amount of body hair to grow.
It causes. What
The
I was saying is, it's a genetic disorder that causes. Okay, well, it's semantics,
Yeah.
but
So there's
okay,
two different genetic diseases here:
right.
rachitis
Hmm.
and Navis pilosis.
Which
So
is a
this he has both
resultant
of them.
of, yeah, supposedly, if you have rachitis, you're probably going to get this pilosis thing. So Gardner
Okay.
Fox must have looked up some fancy terms. Well, when you look up rachitis, that's actually rickets. It's like a childhood disease that
Oh.
causes, it's like from
Ha.
vitamin D deficiency. You think of normally it's kids, or it's like people that crossed the Atlantic Ocean, the
Hmm.
pilgrims or whatever, didn't have any fruit or anything to eat, so they got their bones got soft and distorted. But
Vitamin D or C?
what's that vitamin D?
Really? Because D you can get from sunlight.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Well, I
weird.
don't know. It
Okay,
could
I'm
be
sorry.
C, but I don't. I just looked up. It said D, but
Okay.
it said it causes that softening and distortion of the bones, typically resulting in bow legs. Certainly doesn't make them big and strong, but
No.
and then the hairiness, that condition, the navis pilosis, is basically a type of mole that is both pigmented and hairy. So some people will get like a big mole on their
Okay.
body. They can turn malignant sometime in life, but it has hair on it. That's
Okay.
what that is, not turning them into the
Not full
Shaggy
body.
Man.
Not full body hair.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So he's like basically a giant hairy mole. So
Okay.
I thought that was kind of funny. You gotta give it to Gardner for giving us something that sounds real enough to not bother looking it up.
Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, so I actually enjoyed reading this. I was thinking that I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to like this or not, but
You mean
I
the whole
actually
thing or just this
yeah,
issue?
yeah, the
Yeah.
whole thing, all 6 issues, yeah. And what's bad is I had read this. I thought I'd read this once before, um,
Yeah.
but none of it felt familiar.
Years do that to us. I
Yes. Hmm.
I am glad for the least of which reasons are Gene Colan. I haven't
Yes.
really seen I haven't seen his work in so long, and this is his. This is I don't know. I'd say his magnum opus type stuff, but he wanted this assignment. He put
Hmm.
70 issues out,
Hmm.
and I don't think he missed any. And it's really when people talk about creators and what they did. When you talk about Gene Colan,
Yep.
it's Tomb of Dracula. Yeah.
I have a page of art. It's an inked page, unfortunately, not a penciled page, and it's from there was a later 4 issue Tomb of Dracula prestige size book.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a page of Tomb of Dracula art. I'm staring at it on my wall right now. So
Nice.
yeah, I think
That's
it's
nice.
Al Williamson. No, 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 no. Who did the? I can't remember who inked it, but not Al Williamson. It was somebody. Maybe it was. I don't remember, but I have that, so it's kind of cool.
That is cool. I mean, man, if I had room for art, I'd have to have my own house. My wife would be like,
Yeah.
"You're lucky you got what you got."
Well, just take down that USA map. You don't need that USA
I'm,
map there.
I'm, just in case she listens to this, which she never will. I'm gonna. I mean, we have considered taking. We both have that and a full
World,
world
yeah.
map, and we used that when we got to our retirement age and didn't retire. When we travel, we would put a little
Hmm.
pin as to where we'd been. That was the idea behind that. They got a little foam behind it,
Okay,
but
I
it
see. I
does.
didn't realize
It
that. Yeah,
it takes up all kinds of space where I could be putting up a lot of.
you
Now
could put
what?
like 4 pieces of original art there in that amount of space. So
You're right. You're right. But what she did give me I can't even turn my
no, you don't want to do that. 'Cause your
yeah.
connection just
I'm on
completely
my
went off.
yeah. My I've got when we remodeled, I took a door out behind me this way,
Hmm.
and I put up a bookshelf, so I have some room for books and statues, and it looks really nice. So I'm happy with that. So I'll take what I can get.
So do you want to grade this, or do we just want to leave it as it is?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I don't mind grading it. I mean,
Okay,
it's
all right.
yeah.
Well, what do you? I'm gonna go. I'm traveling somewhere between a fine and very fine at this point. I'm gonna go. Man, I'll just split the difference. Go fine, very fine, which is at 7.0
Yeah.
grade, because I think I'm gonna keep reading this.
Oh,
Since it's on that
yeah.
Marvel app, I I'd kind of like to see, especially since we had the Marv Wolfman stuff starting next.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to continue on. So I'm gonna give it a 7. Fine, very fine.
Well, I don't want to be a copycat, but that's what I'm going to do because that feels like a fair.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking. I use a cheat sheet to remind me, just the numbers and the alpha versions. So very fine at a 7.0 seems right because you have the pluses we have. Now, if I was just grading these first 6 issues, I'd say maybe a little bit a grade lower. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that this lasted 70 issues, and even back then, that was a pretty good accomplishment. It was a horror anthology, the longest running villain, if you want to call Dracula a villain, the longest running villain title in history is what I read. So,
Oh, okay.
so I think there gives a
And
lot of
70
credit.
issues of Gene Colan artwork is not bad. So
Exactly. So
yeah.
I'm thinking that Gene Colan artwork, plus it's a genre. It's not your typical. I'm so used to DC horror and the same formula stories over and
Mm-hmm.
over. This is new because it's an adventure as much as it is horror.
Mm-hmm.
So I really dug it. It's almost like Tomb Raider or one of those types of books or
And
stories.
and the main reason that I want to keep reading, I want to find out if Gort comes back.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we can talk a writer into bringing him
Yes,
back
there we go.
nowadays. Yeah.
Hey, we'll put a bug in like Kyle Stark's ear or something. Hey, you need to write a
Oh,
story about Gort.
absolutely.
He probably would.
But it has to be a team up between Gort and Taj,
There you
and
go. No
it'd be
dialogue
a
in the
wordless.
entire.
It'd be no
Yes,
dialogue. Yeah.
yes. Okay, all right, done. Oh, okay. Mike, you said you had a surprise.
I
What's the
do.
surprise? Okay, I'm getting scared.
Well, this is you're the target of this, so yeah, you should be scared. You
Okay.
should, but then again, you shouldn't. So I've got.
Okay.
I kind of threw out the idea of a little trivia segment to you. I think
Oh.
a time or two ago, and I decided, you know what? I'm just going to ask you three questions, and it
Okay.
comes from another trivia book that I bought a while back. I think Eric from Longbox told me about these. It's the Silver Wolf comic book
Okay.
trivia book, and
Yes. He
and
used whenever he sent in. Didn't he send in a question for us one time from one of these
I think
books?
so. I think
Yes. When
so.
we were
Yeah.
doing the comic book trivia, he sent that to Shad, and Shad put that on us. And I think they are very difficult questions.
But I was pretty. You'll find that I was pretty fair about this. So
Okay. All right. Good.
there's
Okay.
a total of 420 in one issue. So it's just like basically it looks like a fan person,
Mm-hmm.
a fan person, a fan just typed these up and put it on there. But it's cool. It's I
Okay.
think it's more fun than going on the internet and looking. So three
Oh
different
yeah.
categories.
Okay.
One's independent, one's Marvel, one's DC.
Okay.
You pick the order of which you what you want to go. No prize involved. Just
It's a no
no
prize.
prize, and you
A no
can
prize.
yeah, no prize. So
Okay. I
yeah,
I do not have a preference.
okay,
So just whichever is first in the list, let's just go with that.
okay. So when I read this first question, keep in mind that this is independent,
Okay.
even though the question sounds like it might not be. So
Okay.
here we go.
Okay. And what year was this
Oh,
trivia book published?
1987. So anything
Okay.
post
All right.
1987 won't be in here, right?
Okay. All right. Okay.
So how many independent? How
Okay.
many appearances did the original Spider-Woman make in 1944?
The original Spider Woman. Okay. I am not familiar with this character at all, so I'm going to go with one.
You get it. You
Ooh,
got it.
okay.
You got it. That's a
Complete
great
guess.
guess. So,
Complete guess.
and it's funny as I was writing this one, I'll give you the explanation here, but I was writing this because I thought it was I just got through reading Secret Wars and the second
Hmm.
Spider-Woman first
Julia
appeared in that.
Carpenter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Carpenter, yeah. Anyway, then as I'm looking at it and looking at it, like, well, this isn't even the Marvel Spider-Woman. So the answer is although several characters have adopted the name Spider-Woman in Marvel Comics, the first character to be called Spider-Woman in a comic book debuted in 1944. This character, Helen Goddard, was a non-superpowered crime fighter who appeared in a single issue of Major Victory Comics #1, published by Dynamic Comics, not Marvel's
Not DC.
predecessor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't
Different
DC,
DC.
that DC, and it
Different
also
DC.
wasn't Marvel's predecessor, Timely Comics, which you might
Huh.
have thought that, but no, you got it right. So one out of one.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Lucky guess. 100% lucky guess.
People say I'd rather be lucky than good. But.
Good. Okay.
All right, so here we go with the Marvel.
All right.
What is the occupation of She-Hulk's father?
I don't know, and dead space, dead air is not exciting for a podcast, so I'm just gonna hope that she just went in the family business and was also an attorney.
No, if you would have said law enforcement, I would have given it to you. He was the L.A. County Sheriff.
Okay. All right.
Yep. If you would have said police or
It's
something.
been a long time since I've read that first issue,
Yeah.
so of course it may not even been in the first issue. So
All right. Then lastly is a DC. Who is Adam Blake known as? This is a hero, of course.
I know, and I should know this. And again, because dead air is not good for me to sit here and ramble on. Adam Blake, Adam Blake, Adam Blake, Adam Blake. Don't know.
He was a
Sorry.
50s sci-fi hero. I'll give you one hint. 50s sci-fi
50s
hero.
sci-fi hero for DC. Adam Blake. I mean, I'm just gonna. I mean, okay, that predates Captain Adam, and that predates. I mean, Adam Strange is Adam Strange. So I'm trying to think of some of the other. No, I don't know.
All right. You're going to put your palm to your
I probably am.
forehead.
That name sounds familiar. So.
It's yeah, he played a pretty big role in the Kingdom Come. Captain Comet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have got that.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
no, I don't know that I've ever read a Captain Comet story before. So
Yeah.
yeah. So no. Okay. Well, at least the only one I got right was the one I guessed on.
You're a good guesser.
Oh goodness gracious, that was terrible.
Oh well, that
Oh,
was your
that
surprise.
hurt.
You
That
can.
hurt.
I'll give you my since there's 2 volumes of this. If you want me one next time I see, you, I'll give you the other volume, which is
Okay.
later, and you can throw them at me if you
All
want.
right.
Okay.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
Okay. All right. The 2 people who listen to this podcast, tell us if you want more trivia.
Right. There you go.
You like listening to us fumble over ourselves as we try not to just stare at the camera.
It seems awful. It seems a lot easier when you're typing
Reading
the
them?
question.
Yeah.
When you're reading them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you want to talk a little bit about what we've been reading? You think you got time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got,
Okay. All right.
should have time.
All right. So I'll let you go first because you have better notes than I do.
Well, I only have notes because I need notes. I can't remember uh, more specifics unless I write this stuff down. But there is this Boom Studios title called "Be Not Afraid," and I remember just because that "Be Not Afraid" is like a little verse out of the Bible, or or out of maybe a hymn or something, and I thought the cover art looked really good. It's sort of painted, and that dark figure in the background looked pretty scary with this kind of, I don't know what kind of hat you would call that, like a flat rimmed. Anyway, it's by a writer named Jude Ellison S. Doyle, and the art's by Alessandro Esterin, and the cover is by Rico Murakami. And it's all about the main protagonist, I guess you'd say, is Cora Reems. She was a farm girl growing up, and she received a prophetic vision and visited by an angel. And through this divine encounter, she sort of has that whole what was it? Was it Carrie or Rosemary's Baby? Rosemary's Baby. Anyway, she gives
Rosemary's
birth
Baby,
to
yeah.
us. The encounter with the angel leads to a son named Jordy. And so Jordy's a half angel, half human, but instead of being good, he is an absolute terrifying force of evil. And the evil exudes from this character as you read it. When he walks by frogs, they boil in their skins. The crops rot. The townspeople know him, and they try to stay away from him, or at least not. They try not to aggravate him in any way. It's his looks being sort of innocent looking, being sort of at odds with his actions is really also something that really gets you. So now Cora has, in this first issue, I've only got the first issue read. It's taken a while to get out the second issue, I guess. But when Jordy turned 18, Cora had another vision, and Heaven is basically saying, look, we found out what happened with the angel, and you need to destroy this son of yours because he's a grotesque, uh, what's the word, sacrilegious, heretical thing, and you need to get rid of him. So she's torn between her, despite herself, love for the kid and what her divine duty is. So it's okay. So it's hard. I'm not great at always describing art, but it's all the shadows and stuff you would expect in this type of a book. But the way the angles are and the sort of disoriented, I'm showing my copy up here, but it's real tipsy and just you feel like you're under the influence of some
Something.
force when you're reading it even. So if that was by design, hats off to you, Lissandro. But it's really good. I can't wait for the next issue of this to come out. That doesn't happen very often with a new book, that I'm just, every time I go pick up my comics, I'm saying, hey, did issue 2 come out? So yeah, that's my first.
Be Not Afraid?
Be Not Afraid, yeah.
Be Not Afraid. Okay. All right. Well, mine's not quite as dark. So first thing I'm going to talk about is is IT, the secret world of modern banking. So, not too terribly long ago, there was a solicit in. It might have even been. I don't. It might have even been on the pull box page or something for this series, IT, Secret World of Modern Banking. And after I thought, oh, I should look into that. Well, then I saw that not just issue one was solicited, but all 5 issues were solicited. Well, they were resolicited because the series had been out since, gosh, when did this come out? I'm seeing if I can find a date here real fast, and I can't find one. But it was 2017. So this is not new. It just, I guess they
Oh,
maybe found some warehouse copies or something, so they just put it back in the catalog. But anyway, what caught my eye was the fact that it was IT, and of course that's what I teach. I'm an IT instructor at a community college. So I thought, okay, I want to check this out. So again, it's IT Secret World of Modern Banking. It's from Black Box Comics. There's a second volume, which I actually have stuck over in my to read pile. And let's see, created by Demetrios Zaharakis, written and penciled by Scott McDaniel. Andy Owens is the inker. Tio Gonzalez colorist. Taylor Esposito is the letterer. Tariq Holmes is a graphic designer that worked on it. But anyway, the premise is there's this guy. He works in the banking industry, and if you think the banking industry is corrupt in the real world, well, this takes it to level 11 as far as the corruption that goes in. So it's like, I mean, they're doing everything they can to mess with auditors, and the crime syndicates are involved, but you have this one main guy. I guess let's see, Evan Adonis, I think is his name. I was just flapping through, and he's the guy who kind of knows what's actually happening and actually how to fix people's problems. But he's not respected at all, which is a feeling that a lot of people in IT get. So he has a supervisor who, because this Evan does such good work, well, people from the outside think it's the supervisor who is actually doing the good work, but it's just him passing stuff on to this other guy. So other people get credit for Evan's work. So this one supervisor gets offered a job at a competing bank, and all he has to do is crack into this laptop. Well, he doesn't have the technical skills to do this, so he convinces Evan. Actually, and you come to find out that the IT supervisor is being social engineered because it's not actually a test. They're wanting him to break into this laptop because it has some information that they want to pull off of it. Mm-hmm. So he then passes it on to Evan, who actually is able to successfully break into it, but he made a backup, and it gets involved with a federal agency. But I don't know. It was just a fun read for somebody who is in IT. And what's also kind of funny is at the back of the book, they actually have these like 3 pages of tips on how to secure your digital life. So it's like things that you should do, and things that you should know. So it gives you like all this little hit list of social engineering and securely deleting files and sensitive web browsing and all kinds of stuff like that. So
that needs to be required reading for the company, the employees in my company, because we have to go through like every month a little video training on cybersecurity. So that we should make that required reading.
There you go. So it's just the back 2 pages, but anyway, if you like IT related stuff, I do think it's worth reading. If you're not really into IT, I'm not going to say it's that great, but I enjoyed it enough that I have the second volume is down here in my to read pile. So to me, it was worth reading. So again, that's IT, the Secret World of Modern Banking. Volume.
Well, I'm not a professional. I'm just more of a layperson, but I have a healthy respect for network security and being on the alert for, because I'm sort of like the family. Can you clean the virus? And what do I do when my mother-in-law? What do I do? I just got a message, and this and that. And my wife works in banking, so she's very familiar with a lot of bank fraud, and it is a kind of an interesting. So I wouldn't mind checking that one out myself.
Well, I can let you borrow it if you'd like.
Okay.
So.
All right. Okay. Now, did it mention crypto in it?
No, because this is a little bit before crypto gets super big.
Oh, that's true. If it's 2017.
I mean, it's out there at that time, but it's not. it's not as big. So
Well, I asked that because I didn't want to mention crypto again because my crypto is with a K.
with a K, not with a C.
Right. So my next offering is Crypto, the Last Dog of Krypton, as part of the Superman celebration. It's one of the titles. I don't know how many issues is going to come out. This is just issue 1 that I've read. I have issue 2 that I picked up yesterday. Didn't get a chance to read it yet, but it's by Ryan North, who I know Ryan North from Marvel Comics. I'll tell you, I
Fantastic
think,
Four. Yeah.
yeah, these creators are pretty much. It seems like they're all freelance now. It's really, I kind of like it that way. Um, Mike Norton is the artist, and Mike Norton is known for drawing dogs. He did the famous Battle Pug
Battle Pug.
series.
Yep.
Yeah. So and the cover is a really excellent cover. If you know Jay Lee's art, you know it when you see it for sure. But it always somehow blends the high concept sci-fi fantasy type designs. It's something out of almost like a what did they call that, the that era, that steampunk, or that steam, not steampunk,
Steampunk.
yeah, steampunk, yeah.
Mhm.
But the designs on this little rocket here that little baby Kal-El's on is very typical of his work. But anyway, the story is what you expect. It's an origin story, and it's very light read. It begins on Krypton, where Crypto's just a regular dog, which you don't want to think again about this too much because Krypton and Earth must be really genetically alike if they have both humans, humanoid people looks just like us, and dogs.
Dogs.
So so anyway, he's a uh, in this story, baby Kal-El is not an infant. He's more like a 2-year-old toddler maybe, and it's your basic destruction of Krypton story, except it's really focused on, I don't know where in the lore this happened in historically, but I did know that the reason Crypto made it to Earth is that he was like a test pilot or a test subject, not a pilot, of course, but he was a test subject that they just wanted to see if the rocket would escape, or make escape velocity and then return safely. But as luck would have it, when a rocket gets out into space, it hits a wormhole,
Oh,
and that wormhole takes Crypto to Earth. And he emerges in Metropolis. It's in the 30s, the way the art is drawn, and it definitely gives a nostalgic touch. I I really dug this. It's just a nice, especially after maybe only 2 days prior having seen Crypto and the Superman movie, and this was, sometimes it feels like we get comics that are forced upon us because of the movie coming out. But this, while they definitely are capitalizing on the movie, it's still a good read. So yeah.
okay, so next up for me, I have The Silence issue number 1. This is from Afterlight Comics. This is one that we talked about it's a number 1 issue from I don't know, probably about a year or so ago. I'm going to read the description on the back of the book. Silence. When former superstar comic book artist Stanley Kane hits rock bottom, how far will he go to get back all he has lost? Now, when I read this, I thought, okay, it's one of those things where it's an artist and what he draws starts coming to life or starts happening, right? So basically, what we see is Stanley Kane going through life, super busy. Sounds of the city are messing with him. He has, like, I don't know if it's a heart attack or a panic attack or both or whatever, ends up in the hospital. He's basically told that he's going to have to get away from all the hustle and bustle, find someplace quiet. So he refers to it as, since it's Superman time, my fortress of solitude, actually as part of the story. Well, you get into the story, and he's, I guess, trying to work. All right, and then all he hears is this thunk, thunk, thunk noise from outside, and it is apparently a guy with an axe, and he's chopping. I guess he's caught a bunch of fish, and he's chopping off the fish heads. Well, it makes him really, really mad. So apparently he draws something, and what he draws causes the guy to die. So It's like noise versus silence, and in that panel you see this guy, this fisherman, who is out there being stabbed through with something. It's not abundantly clear even how this guy dies, which really is the big problem with this comic, in that, okay, when we read the solicit, which is what caused me to want to read this, like the things that he draws then happen. Okay, well, as you're reading the book, you can't, you don't ever see this image that he has drawn that causes this event to happen to this fisherman. And I don't know, it's just, it feels a little muddy. It's just
Yeah.
not, it's not super clean. And so it was a big disappointment because, like I said, if I hadn't read the solicit before and knew what this book was about, I would have been very, very confused at the end
Yeah.
of this story. So it's not one that I'm going to recommend. Again, it's The Silence, issue number 1 from Afterlight Comics.
How'd you come
Art and
across that?
cover
Did you
by,
buy it?
what's that?
Did you get it through a collection, or you bought it?
I bought
You
this
ordered it.
from our pre-orders episode because
Okay.
of,
Yeah.
I actually think I got 3 or 4 copies of it because it's like, we do our investment picks, and
Yeah.
I'll go through and I think something that has a good story that might be worth sitting on for a while. So I picked up 3 or 4 copies, and yeah, I can't imagine this is going to go anywhere. So art and cover by Alex Sanchez, written by Evan Pozios, letters by Letter Squids. So again, I did not order the second issue. I'm glad that I didn't, but I don't know, maybe the premise will appeal for somebody, but the execution was very, very lacking in this book.
Yeah. Well, I might get that IT one or borrow it from you, but
Okay.
I'll follow your
I'll be
advice on
happy.
this one as well. Yeah.
I'll be happy to loan it to you. So
Okay. Well, my next offering is basically 2-in-1. It's Superman Unlimited issues 1 and 2. Issue 3 just came out as well, but again, I haven't gotten to it. And this is again part of the Summer of Superman event or branding, and it's by Dan Slott and Rafael Albuquerque with Marcelo Maiola on inks or colors. I'm not sure if I didn't look that up. I just kind of put it in off the cover here. But issue issue 1, I'm just going to kind of go in chronological order what's happening here. So first we get introduced to Imani Edge. Now I don't know if this is a first appearance or not, but she is the ex-wife of Morgan Edge, who was the GBS head, always, the cigar chomping. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking Perry White, but he was sort of a crass, not so nice TV production, news production guy. Think of Rupert Murdoch or something, I guess. And she takes control of the Daily Planet though, and plans to expand it globally in a more modern way. So during the first few pages, Superman's alerted by Red Tornado about an asteroid made of something. This is kind of key to the story, so I'm bringing it up. But it's made of inertron. But when Superman goes to intercept it, it's only coated in inertron, but it's filled with kryptonite. Well, that just about kills Superman, as you can imagine, because he didn't give up on it. He's still trying to divert the asteroid from hitting Rio de Janeiro, and so it's pretty intense. You get a little flashback to he's like literally experiencing his life and flashing before his eyes. Everything from Crypto's destruction to growing up in Smallville, being Superboy, which that's back in lore. We know the Superboy's in the Wade Action Comics, I believe, and joining this Legion of Superheroes and all that good stuff. And he basically collapses from that kryptonite exposure. He did save the world by it, but he woke up months later in the Justice League Watchtower, and the asteroid, he finds out that the asteroid that he kind of deflected actually landed in a less, I guess, populated area in a nation called El Cadro. I don't know if it's a new nation or if it was an existing one, but it made it the richest the world's richest supplier of kryptonite, which, as you can imagine, in the world of DC Comics, would be quite the commodity. And Superman discovers, I guess this is a plot device here, that he has this new power that protects him from kryptonite for 200 seconds, but leaves him powerless afterwards. So I guess in a world that's going to be chock full of kryptonite, he needs a new power to kind of let him do something, right?
Something.
So, and issue 2 is kind of just an extension on that, except the point I wanted to bring up is that the Daily Planet now has offices in Gotham, Markovia. That's like the home of Geoforce and
Geoforce,
Terra, Gorilla City, and even El Caldero. So the president is of El Caldero is kind of like he's going to be a bad guy. You can tell that right away. He unveils a kryptonite statue, and currency is featuring Superman and crypto. Um, it's you got Jack Ryder is in this book, and I always love Jack Ryder, aka the Creeper, in any book because he's the perfect. He's like he's like a Tucker Carlson in this book. He's like one of these guys that's really like social media provocateur and talking about kryptonite harm, claiming kryptonite harms humans, and it's funny to watch. It's very much a parody of that kind of stuff, and yeah. So I mean the plot is just it just goes on like that. I don't think there's much more. I think Creeper is again one of the most underused characters in DC because of he's not a villain that wants to be a hero, but he's more of a hero that can't help himself from doing bad things because he's always doing stupid bad things. It's great. So I really enjoyed the first 2 issues and look forward to reading the next one.
So you said it's Superman Unlimited?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Well,
yeah, it's
they did that at Marvel. They have the Unlimited run at. That's fairly new, right?
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So yeah, they did like Fantastic Four Unlimited and X Men Unlimited
Yeah.
and all that at Marvel as well. So it's just so weird how these two companies are just back and forth taking each other's
Someday they'll be the
ideas.
same company. You never know.
Yeah, probably. So, all right, this one's gonna be real quick. This is Kahori, Shaper or Reshaper of Worlds. So I picked this up because it was from the second season of What If, the Disney animated special. I believe this is her first comic book appearance, the character Kahori, and she was kind of one of the breakout characters from that What If series. So I thought, well, I'll hold on to it. Plus, it had a couple of cool variant covers, which this is like my favorite one here. This is by Mariah Wolf. I got to
Yeah.
meet her at Cape Comic Con last year and get a sketch and thought, well, I need to pick up this cover just so I have something else from her. I picked up some books from her directly, so I thought I'd grab this. But saying all that to say, to me, the story itself kind of fell flat. It is one of those where it's like she's kind of jumping around between universes because she lives in a world called the Sky World, which is it's a Mohawk place of power outside of space and time. So she is powered just from her abilities from this Sky World. She meets a variant of Loki. Surprise, surprise. They end up in the 616 universe. She's able to team up with Daredevil and Echo, which I was glad to see Echo, but they're really not much of a match for Loki by themselves. So also a team up with variations and variants of Moon Knight, but it felt a little spastic, just kind of bounced around a whole lot without a whole lot of real meat to the story. So it's just a one
Yeah.
shot. So the only way that I would say buy it is if you think Super Kahori is going to be something in the future, and at this point, I'm not so sure. So, but I like the character in the What If series. I was hoping for a little bit more in her introduction into comics.
So that's what I was going to ask you if your impetus for buying it was as much meeting the artist as it was you knowing that character from the What If
Yeah,
series, or
it was the primary reason I picked it up was because of the potential for it to be her first appearance. You know, you
Oh, I
have
see. Yeah.
yeah, you have characters like Harley Quinn who appeared in the animated series before they actually appeared in comic books, and then of course sometimes those things skyrocket in value.
Yeah.
Not so much. I don't think that's going to happen with Kahori, unfortunately. So
Well, nothing ventured,
nothing. Yeah.
nothing gained.
So I got a few copies. There's also a cover by Afua Richardson, who was also there at that same convention. So I think I picked up a one of her covers as well for that book. So
Oh,
okay.
okay. Well,
I thought you were going to do four.
I am.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought you
Go ahead.
froze.
No, I was just waiting for you to start.
Okay. Oh, so
That's how
I've
professional. That's how professional we are here. Is we don't even know. We don't even know.
Well,
So.
I got to thinking, are we counting that Superman Unlimited issues 1 and 2 as one or two? But anyway,
Nope.
yeah, I did have one more, and that's it's a non-traditional book that I read here, but it's it made sense, I guess, that I read it. But it's an interview with Jim Shooter in Marvel Age number 27. So between you and other sources, I've got quite the collection of Marvel Age comics now. And I had heard that he had an interview in 1985 in this issue where he talks about just his tenure as Marvel's editor-in-chief, his approach to storytelling, and the comic book industry as a whole. I mean, it's 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 a good interview. He talks about and this is something I remember Stan Lee saying, that every comic needs to be treated like someone's first comic, and he talks about character development, clear storytelling, and yeah, there was a lot of good stuff to read in here. Uh, he talked a little bit about the direct market, the rise of it, and licenses like Star Wars and GI Joe and Transformers. Just a lot of good. It's one of my I don't want to say weakness. It's just one of the things I like to do is read interviews. I always remembered some of those meanwhile pages that Dick Giordano would have in the DC comics. So they were just one page, half. Not really. Sometimes there was an interview, but sometimes it was just him talking comics, and what's coming up. But yeah, it gave me a good reason to pull up a Marvel Age book that I haven't read yet. So that was it.
All right, cool. Well, I'll be quick on my last one here. So this was a trade that I picked up also at Superman Celebration 2 years ago. Zach Howard was there, and this is Hellboy, The Crooked Man, and The Return of Effie Kolb. So it's actually two stories. The first is the 3-issue The Crooked Man story, which, according to Zach Howard, is Mike Mignola's favorite Hellboy story. And
Oh,
this is written by Mike Mignola with art by the late Richard Corbin. So Richard Corbin has a very definitive style. I don't know if you've seen much Richard Corbin artwork or not.
oh yeah. Wait, that's the guy that just recently died, right?
Yeah, he passed away within the last few
Yeah,
years.
he had a real. I mean, it was distinctive and real, and it was. I want to say in some ways very realistic, very anatomically right, but
It,
also a lot of Well, I think the first time I read him was in a heavy metal magazine.
Yes, he did a lot of, but he also did some work on like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and
Yeah.
there was an underground book called Death Rider, which is like a sci-fi anthology. So
Oh yeah.
he's been all over the place. He even worked at Marvel. There was a Cage miniseries. So, but anyway, so there was two reasons that I read this. One, because I picked it up directly from Zach Howard. I got my signed copy
Nice.
from Zach Howard since he did the two issues. I wanted to read The Crooked Man. I've not read a ton of Hellboy. I think I read we did his first 5 appearances not
Yeah,
too
we
long
did,
ago, and so I thought, and it's nice that this is one that you really don't have to know a whole lot about Hellboy to kind of understand. It's just kind of a supernatural story. Hellboy is almost just like somebody who's along for the ride. But also they just recently released this as a movie, which it unfortunately did not make it to theaters in the United States. But I was able to watch it a few months ago on Hulu, and I actually really liked it. I definitely liked it better than the last Hellboy movie, which was the David Harbour one,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty terrible. I thought this was much better. So I don't know if I suspect that the Hellboy movies are done since they couldn't get a distributor for it. But anyway, Hellboy's the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man is a guy who, um, he was rich and he was taking advantage of indigenous people, and when they hung him, that's how he became crooked from his neck snapping. So he had to basically every time he could, I try to remember exactly what it was, but take a soul, he got a penny. So he was trying to get back his fortune, one penny at a
Oh my
time.
gosh.
So it's actually really clever. It's really really good. So yeah, if you even are looking for if you have never read any Hellboy, looking for some place to start. If you don't want to start at the beginning, I think you can read this Hellboy, The Crooked Man for sure. And then the Effie Kolb, which is the Zach Howard art, is kind of a follow up where he returns several years later to talk about what happened to another character from the story. So it was definitely of the four things that I mentioned, if I had to tell you to read one, that's the one I would tell you to read. Followed by the IT, followed by Kahori, followed by the Silence #1.
Well, the Richard Corbin art will have me. I'm gonna have to look, maybe see if I can find that in Comixology or something
Yeah,
digitally.
it probably would be there for sure. So
Yeah.
okay, hey, hot off the presses, and I'm not super excited about this news. But this is according to Key Collector. Taika Waititi signed on to direct a new Judge Dredd movie with screenwriter Drew Pearce. So hey, they must have listened to our Judge Dredd episode and decided we need to make another movie. So
Hey, all right.
it's nice to be relevant because we just talked about Judge Dredd just a few episodes ago. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what episode was that? It's not been very long at all. Low key Judge Dredd episode 209. So this is 215. So 6 episodes ago we were talking about Judge Dredd. So
Oh, that's pretty
all
cool.
right, you want a CLZ Shake?
Sure.
All right, you got your app opened already?
Yeah.
All right, you can go ahead then.
Okay. Oops. Let's see.
He says he was ready. I think he lied.
I had it. I had the. It was on like one title, so I was only going to get that
Oh
that
yeah, that
title.
one
So
title.
I had to get it back to the main screen. So, okay, this I have Omega Man number 12.
Oh, is
No,
this the
it's
Tom
not
King
the.
series?
No, I'm sorry. This is the
Oh,
original from 1984
oh, okay.
with writer Roger Sliffer, and artist Todd Smith, and cover artist Mike DiCarlo. So yeah, it's thing about Omega Men. Seems like either you love them or you hate them. They're a spacefaring team. Think Guardians of the Galaxy Light are just
Mm-hmm.
not as popular as Guardians of the Galaxy. They've got they've got the stereotypical or the archetypes. You know, you got the big brutish character, which his name's Brute. You got Primus. You've got Doc. You've got Doc's the like computer guy or heads like a computer monitor. Tigor, he's like the Wolverine type. Trying to remember some of the other ones. Primus, he's like the leader, and yeah. So I couldn't tell you the first thing about this story. I know I read it back in the '80s. I was buying these direct market comics or these Baxter books, and it was not a bad series as far as my general feeling about the Omega Men. I think Tom King's version of it was an interesting take on it, like a lot of his stuff is. But no, it's yeah. So number 12. I think the big thing about Omega Man as far as first appearances is number 3 is isn't it number 3,
Mm-hmm.
Scott? That's his first
First
appearance
appearance
of
of
Lobo.
Lobo.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
your turn.
All right. And what do I get? Oh, Silver Surfer. Okay. Sorry. I should be more excited about that, but again, my personal collection is actually relatively small. So this is Silver Surfer number 140. I think I have this complete run. I might be missing one or two issues. So this is written by J.M. DeMatteis, artist John J. Muth, who I don't remember that these later issues I wasn't reading them, and it was me going back later on collecting them. So I don't really have anything to say about that issue of Silver Surfer, other than whenever Ron Lim was on it, I was buying it
Yeah.
every month, and went back and picked up all I think it was Marshall Rogers who started that volume. So I went and picked all that up later on, and I enjoyed that. And then as I was buying, it got to a point where, well, I stopped collecting for a while, so I just stopped. And then all those books, I guess whenever I sold out, they were one of the handful, I shouldn't say handful, of the few hundred that I kept. Everything else got sold off. So whenever I got back in, I thought, well, I might as well finish the run, but I haven't gotten around to reading those. So maybe after I read Tomb of Dracula, maybe then I can jump back over and go through Silver Surfer. I probably should. So so I can stop saying, well, I haven't read this one yet. So all right, Mike. So anything happening on the road show?
Oh yeah, we just got a brand new episode out as of a couple days ago, or yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
or a couple days ago, and it was okay. So this was one of those pit stop episodes. I say one of them as if people have heard of it before. It's the very first pit stop episode because the shop that I went to, Fat Jack's Comic Crypt, it's closed. Or when I went there, first of all, when I went there, they couldn't do an interview. They were real busy with taking in a collection, but they were happy to make a recommendation for me to buy a book, and they did. And it was Junkyard Joe, and joining me on that episode was one of the all-star comic podcasters, in my opinion, Adam Murdo from CGS notoriety. So we did things kind of a la Adam or one of those guys doing their footnotes, deep dive. So whatever time I gained from not having the interview with the shop or a full interview, we still had a 2 hour plus episode. So, but it was anytime you got Murd talking about nuances and this and that in a comic story, it's always good listening. So, if anything, listen to that episode for the sake of hearing him, not
Yep.
me.
And to hear another Muddle the Murd.
That's kind of what got me on the whole trivia kick again. I'm like, I'm gonna surprise Scott.
Oh,
So yeah, that's what's coming. That's the most recent, and there'll be more to come.
okay. And I guess for 216, we'll just have a pre-orders episode for
Yes,
our
216.
August
Yes, for
pre-orders.
August
Yep.
pre-orders, which is the Lunar Next Phase and Penguin Random House. So, folks, I just recently sent a George Hanna from Meanwhile at the podcast. He asked me where we do our shopping, our guess quote unquote shopping, as we're reviewing these catalogs. So I gave him all the links so he could follow along. So hopefully we'll get some feedback from George as well. Oh, by the way, I did appear on George's podcast not too long ago. You remember that one book that I was asking you if you wanted to review with me, Britannia?
Oh yeah.
So I found somebody to review.
You found another sucker, huh?
Found another sucker. Yeah, so we read and reviewed it on his show. He was looking. A lot of his cast was gone or not available for some stuff in the summer, so he was building some episodes in. So I had a good time with George doing that.
So, and if somebody wanted to reach out to you beside podcasts at birdcomics.com, how might they do that?
Well, I'd love to get an email from someone at mike@comicshoproadshow.com just to make sure that doggone thing is working. You know, I gotta check it once in a while. Send myself an email.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you can also leave comments. Scott always does a really great job of putting things on the Facebook page for Campus Comics Cast. You know, it's you kind of see some images. You even do the YouTube little clip, don't you?
The
or video
reels,
clip.
yeah.
Yeah, the reels.
Every
yeah.
once in a while, as long as there's enough
Yeah.
images to make
Yeah.
it worthwhile. So,
Yeah, so you can make a comment there, and we try to talk about those in later episodes. So that's me. What
All
about
right,
you?
and I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURGcomics.com, with links to my social media. And I would love it if you would follow my new Instagram page, Comic Book Ad. So COMIC, let's see, make sure I spell it right, BOOKAD, where I am just posting vintage comic book ads from the 30s on up into at this point, I don't think I've posted anything newer than the 70s, but I'll probably go into the early 2000s. So I'm having some fun doing that, posting old comic book ads. And if you want to provide me some feedback, anything I could do to make it a little bit more interesting, I would love to have that. And we will be back soon with episode 216 and pre-orders.
Okay, folks, that wraps it up for this episode. Come back next time. We'll have more for you. That's the shortest episode ever. I listened to an episode called Merriam-Webster's Word of the Day. It's like a minute long, minute and a half maybe. Yeah.